One of the great things about repurposing your content when you're a small marketing team is that it can make you seem bigger than you are. If you have really slick and effective content repurposing processes at play, people might just think that a small 1 or 2 person marketing team is a team of 10 people or more. Listen on to find out how to create that big team vibe through effective repurposing. You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Content 10x podcast. I'm Amy Woods, the founder and CEO of Content 10x. And in this episode, I want to look at ways that you can repurpose effectively when you are a small team or even a 1-person marketing team, and what the benefits are of doing so. Now, this topic is actually inspired by an interview that I had with Jess Cook, who is the head of content at Lasso. She was the first guest on season 2 of our other podcast, B2B Content Strategist, which is going strong with some fantastic guests and episodes. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts or check it out on our YouTube channel and website, so I'll link to all of that in the show notes. So, B2B Content Strategist, something that Jess Cook said that really stood out to me. She said that repurposing is what makes her small team look big. People are often surprised when they find out how many people she has on her team, because they are seemingly everywhere doing all the things. And people just assume there are dozens of hands-on marketing experts all over the show, but that isn't the case. Really inspiring, actually, a great example of when content repurposing can really work for a marketing team. So in this episode, I'm going to cover why repurposing makes small marketing teams appear bigger than they are, how to repurpose effectively when you are a small team, and the importance of having repurposing systems and processes in place. But first, before I get to the main content, just to mention, if you want content repurposing tips and advice, industry updates, inspiring stories, and exclusive news delivered straight to your email inbox, then join hundreds of marketers, business owners, and creators and become a Content 10x insider. Head to content10x.com/newsletter to get our bi-weekly newsletter. So as I was saying, repurposing is the key to getting your brand, content and message in front of a much broader audience, much broader than if you didn't repurpose. Now, epic repurposing can be achieved whether you are a 1-person band, a small team or a large team. When you repurpose content, you're managing to publish a lot of content in different formats and in different platforms, and your messaging is aligned. At least that is what you want to be aiming for. And because of this, you appear to your audience and the online world to be running a huge, efficient content engine. Say, for example, you do a webinar once every 2 weeks and you repurpose it into a YouTube video, short social media videos, LinkedIn posts, an email to your subscribers, tweets, a blog post, and some quote graphics that you share on social media. And you distribute the content over your channels over an extended period, and you follow this process every time you do a webinar. So every 2 weeks, you follow that process. Or another example, perhaps you have a weekly podcast, and each week you take the highlights from the episode and break them up into short social media videos, a Twitter thread, a few LinkedIn posts, and tag any guests or experts that you include and mentions, and all of that content can be going out on a weekly basis and distributed over time as well. So in these examples, people on all those channels are going to see content about your webinar or podcast in multiple formats, and your message is going to really sink in. You're increasing your touch points with your audience and your time spent with your audience as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that all of that repurposing doesn't happen by magic, and it takes you and your team time to do the work. But the point is that when repurposing is at the core of your content strategy, you save time overall. For one, you save all the time, stress, and mental fatigue of coming up with the new content ideas for all of your channels. And I know that as a small or solo marketing team, You may be asking, but how do I keep a content creation and repurposing engine going effectively and efficiently month after month and year after year? So here are some tips. So number one, it's so important to have really efficient systems and processes in place. At Content 10x, we love systems and processes and are utterly reliant on them when it comes to delivering over and above our clients' expectations every single week. So we're not just creating all of our content, we are a content repurposing agency. So you can imagine the systems and processes we need in place to be doing all of the repurposing for our various clients. So we have SOPs, they are standard operating procedures for everything that happens in the business, and they are updated regularly whenever anything changes. And obviously, they're created every time we identify or develop a new process. Project management tools such as Asana, ClickUp, Trello, Monday.com are all vitally important to keep lines of communication open and manage your projects and your tasks and provide team with updates and everything like that. So they are very much like a central to-do list and so much more as well. At Content 10x, we are Team ClickUp. So ClickUp is our project management software of choice, but they're all very good. And we first used Trello for years before we moved over to ClickUp as well. So it's about picking what's right for you. I actually spoke about this in depth in terms of systems and processes for content repurposing in a previous episode of the podcast. So that was, as I said, all about developing effective systems and processes for repurposing your content. So head to content10x.com/255 to check that out. I'll also link to it in the show notes because it's super useful, whatever size your content and your marketing team may be. Now, secondly, my advice for a small team is also to create content in batches. So, for example, if you have a weekly podcast, record all episodes for a month in one day. Now, if batches don't work for you, then at least create your content in advance. So again, as the example stands, if you have a weekly podcast, for example, always be working 4 or 5 episodes ahead at a time. Number 3, I have a phrase that I use over and over again. You've heard me say it before if you have listened to the podcast before, but I can't resist saying it again here, which is repurposing starts at the planning phase. So know what your content will become and create it with repurposing in mind. Tip number 4, it's also good to ask yourself whether you need to create new content right now. Perhaps you could spend the next month or even few months repurposing what you already have. Just look at your analytics, look at your best performing content, and work out what to repurpose from there. Now, we have an episode on this too if you'd like to dig further into how to use analytics to decide what content to repurpose. Find it at content10x.com/50. And I'll also add a link to this in the show notes. But the good news, we are planning a new episode in the next few weeks as well on this very topic, so watch this space. And I think this is a really important one for leadership to understand and something that you as marketers need to be educating the leaders and stakeholders in the business who have a say in the content and marketing activity. Because the question is often not, what do we need to create? It's what do we need to repurpose and what do we have already and are we making the most of it? Tip number 5, when it comes to distribution, you're going to want to schedule the content out to save yourself and your team time in doing it all in real time. So use the tools built into the platforms themselves. There are lots of scheduling tools in Facebook and Twitter and on your website and YouTube. So use those inbuilt scheduling tools. And there are lots of great third-party tools as well, like HubSpot and Buffer. So that's a really useful time saver and efficient way of getting your content and repurposed content out there. Now, finally, it would be totally remiss of me not to mention that you can outsource the repurposing. So many of our clients are companies with very small marketing teams that are running extremely tight ships and simply don't have the time to repurpose. But from the outside, you'd think they have a massive marketing team. They actually have a small team, then partner with us at Content 10x to ensure content is maximized. So we provide a full end-to-end repurposing service for things like video podcasts, webinars, events, research reports, articles, and more. And we take great pride in making our clients' marketing teams look much bigger than they are. So that's a very valid option as well, to stay lean and focused and outsource. But whether you outsource or not, if you put repurposing at the heart of what you do, you'll get off the hamster wheel of pumping out big piece after big piece of new content and stressing over what to post on social media and so on. Instead, you want to develop and then follow your content repurposing systems and processes. You want to create content in batches if possible. Certainly plan your content with repurposing in mind, and make sure to schedule out your content. If you do all of that, then your content repurposing will work like a charm. So there you have it, my top tips on effective repurposing when you're a small marketing team. And as I mentioned already, if you need help with your content repurposing, then do get in touch with us here at Content 10X. We work with B2B businesses, helping them to make the most of their content. You can just head to content10x.com/services to find out more about what we do and if we might be able to help you. Okay, that's a wrap. So thank you so much for joining me in this episode. I really appreciate it. And all that's left to say is I will catch you in the next one.